What's up, bros and hoes, or whatever floats your goat? It's your boy Relentless, and today I'm bringing you yet another Division build video. And as you can see, you have hit the lucky lottery, and we're open 24 hours. But anyways, before I get into the build, just want to give you a couple of updates. We got some great things going on in our gaming community, which is Revolution Gaming. Please go check them out. Their link is in the description below. Also, we're nearing close to 1K subs. We are currently 41 subs away, and as soon as we hit that 1,000 sub mark, I myself will be giving away either a PS4 Pro or an Xbox S. So be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you would like an extra entry into this giveaway, you can also follow me on Twitter at RelentlessRG. But anyways, let's jump right into this build. Keep in mind, this is just a generalization. And to be quite honest and quite frank with you, this will be my first ever Deadeye build that I've made. So be kind. Any constructive feedback is greatly appreciated, and you can comment that in the description below. But this is my take on it. I've done the research, try to figure out what's best. Do a lot of PvPing and also doing PvE situations, and tried and tested. This is how I interpret and how I would use a Deadeye build, in which it is a lot of fun and it does a lot of damage. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's start with the weapons first. First, I am using the Surplus SVD, and yes, there are other marksman rifles out there that have higher base damage, but I like the overall accuracy and stability of the SVD, plus the magazine size of it and its rate of fire. And I have Deadly, Toxic, and Unforgiving on it. Now, you can substitute Unforgiving for Competent. There's many other things that you can go with. This is actually the best one that I rolled. I believe I rolled probably over 30, and this was the best one that I could get. Also, you could have Brutal in there, but overall, this does very nicely. And as you can see, 76.5K. Going over the attachments, I have 110.5% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, 5.2% rate of fire, and I'm using the large optic C79 scope versus the MK15 scope. During mid-range battles, when you want to scope in and get the automatic crit, the C79 scope is the best scope in the way to go when going a Deadeye build. Because as we all know, zooming in with a times 12 or times 15 scope, and your enemies are like, mid-range, and then when you scope in on them, it's hard to move to left and right to actually get them shots off unless they're absolutely standing still. So I recommend the C79 scope, and I'll show you that in a moment once I get done with the build on how it affects and how you scope in. But anyways, it has crit hit damage, accuracy, and stability. The Omega Rifle Suppressor has 18.5% headshot damage, 4% crit hit damage, 3% crit hit chance, and 48% reduced threat. The large underbarrel has 18% crit hit damage, 4.5% reload speed, and 2.5% stability. Now moving on to the short versions of, say, if you're getting flanked and you need to put down significant enough damage to the oncomers, I have my Sausage with Brutal, Responsive, and Competent on it. And it works out real nice for up close battles, especially when you're getting flanked, because using a Deadeye build, you're going to be sitting back further and not up close and personal. But this takes care of those that are trying to flank you, so that way you can do those small close quarters incursions as well. You can substitute this for anything such as, the police ump here. You can go with the LMG. You can even go with the lightweight M4, which is also I have here with Brutal, Responsive, and Fierce. So you can mix and match. And as you can see, I got great base damage on my lightweight M4 at 23.2K. And on it, I have 110% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, 3% crit hit chance, large optics, 7.5% crit chance, 4.5% optimal range, 5.5% headshot damage, And the Omega Rifle Suppressor, I have 17.5% headshot damage, 2.5% crit hit chance, 4% crit hit damage, and 47% reduced threat. My underbarrel, 31% reload speed, accuracy, and crit hit damage. So with that additional reload speed, I can reload this thing really, really fast and put down a lot of damage. So it is very versatile, and I prefer using the sausage. I've gotten accustomed to using it, and the stagger is quite awesome in itself. But for mid-range battles, if you don't feel comfortable using the SVD, then the lightweight M4 or a good sausage is always a good way to go. Now let's jump right into the build. I'm utilizing the Reckless chest piece. It has a awesome roll on it with 4% all resist, 14,513 in health. And in my major attributes, I'd rather have ammo capacity instead of increased kill XP. In my mod slots, I have 263 firearms with 2968 health, and another 260 firearms and 3224 health. Now, before we go any further, there's different things that are more or less versatile when it comes to this build. You can spec in and change out and go to your personal preference on what you would like to use, whether it's the Barrett's chest piece down here. I don't really prefer using rapid. This is more of a, not as far as a complete glass cannon build, but it is right there on the edge of being considered one. Also, if you can switch out this Reckless chest piece for this chest plate, you could also do that and swap it out for a Tenacious mask. But unfortunately, the reason why I'm using Savage gloves is because I have not been able to find a decent pair of Deadeye gloves. So I used what I had available. So moving on to the mask, as you can see, 7% enemy armor damage, great roll on my firearms, and a great base damage or base armor value on my armor at 994. The max is 1001. And the minor attributes is 11% damage to elites, which makes this build viable in PvP and in PvE. Now, one thing also I want to let you know, anywhere you can spec into enemy armor damage with this build, stack enemy armor damage on everything possible if you are able to, because that just makes this build even more potent and more vicious and deals out a lot more damage in both PvP and in PvE. And moving on to my mod slot, 261 stamina with 3217 in health. Now you can also adjust this, and instead of the health, you can go with skill haste on every single mod because you are running low skill power. But in this instance, I needed the extra little over 15,000 in health because I didn't want it to be, too squishy to where, somebody would sneeze and I would fall over. So I wanted at least a decent amount of survivability. And even at 269, and I think I'm running around 190,000 in my health pool, which is still fairly decent. Now, if I wanted to spec all into skill haste, that would drop my toughness down to around 240. And you can still do that if you so choose. It all depends on how you prefer and how you would like this build to go. But if you're going to go skill haste on all your mods, that'll be equivalent to 15%, and then you would need skill haste on your gloves and also your holster. But moving on to the knee pads. The knee pads, I have a good armor roll. Also, I have a good firearms roll. In the major attribute spot, I would rather have crit hit damage in this situation, or even stack on even more further health. But unfortunately, as you can see, I couldn't roll these. These had already been rolled, so I couldn't roll them to firearms. And in this build, I expect everything more or less into firearms, with only, I believe, one piece actually going into stamina itself. And then the skill power just didn't work out too well for me in this situation because I prefer crit hit damage. But this overall has a better armor value on it, so that increases my toughness. But if you can get the 8% crit hit damage in this, it makes this build even more damaging and makes it a lot stronger. But if you want to be a little more in longevity when it comes to your health, then by all means roll health on there. It's very lenient, and it depends on how you play in your play style. And in the major attributes, great to have shock resistance at 31% because shock turrets have become a major thing once again in the Dark Zone. So this helps out. Also 31% disorient resistance and 30% disrupt resistance. And in my mod slot, I have 256 firearms with health and first aid self-heal. Moving on to the backpack. In this situation, you can completely differently rearrange how this build goes. I prefer to run Tenacious Mask with Reckless, but you can have a Specialized and Tenacious. But this is more or less a damage dealer, so I went with the Reckless chest piece, and I'd rather have Reckless and Tenacious Mask, but unfortunately the Tenacious Mask that I have, it is rolled to crit chance and it has stamina on it, but it does have a awesome roll to firearms, and since, as you can see, I rolled the major attributes on it, I could not roll the stamina onto firearms. But if I wanted to be a little more tanky, I could also go this route. And then switch to a Deadeye chest piece. But the only thing that's holding this build back from being even better than what it is the missing crucial component of Deadeye gloves. And we'll get to that here in a second, but let's finish up with the backpack. As you can see, I opted in for health, but you can go with skill power if you so choose, or you can go with enemy armor damage. This had a very low firearms roll on it, so I had to roll that, or I would have rolled enemy armor damage on this major attribute spot, and that's really what you want to have. Because with that, and with enemy armor damage on your knee pads, and on your chest, that just creates this build to be very, very, very more potent. And also my minor attributes, I have 56% ammo capacity. Now moving on to the mods, I have 261 firearms with health, 5% first aid self-heal, and a 6% first aid self-heal. Now here's the gloves. I actually picked these up just not too long ago, and on the Deadeye build, you would want definitely marksman rifle damage, and as you can see, enemy armor damage. You do not need the crit hit chance rolled on anything because, as we all know, when you're scoped in, it's going to be an automatic crit. But if you're not scoped in and you're hip firing or whatnot, these Savage Gloves do pay off, and if you do have crit hit chance, then you can still crit shots by hip firing with the marksman rifle while using Deadeye. It has a high firearms roll, and you definitely want crit hit damage and marksman rifle damage, and like I said earlier, spec into as much enemy armor damage as possible. I just wish these gloves actually had a higher base armor roll on them. But moving on to the holster, I have good stats across the board, decent base armor. The major attributes, I had to go with health of what was on it. There's many other viable options, but I had low skill power. It was only like 1120, so I would be pretty much under 80k skill power, so I opted in to roll that instead. So you just kind of use this as a blueprint and ask yourself what kind of build you want. Do you want high damage? Do you want more survivability? Do you want a more overall balanced build, or you just want something that's going to just be a nail driver and just dish out as much damage as possible and just go on the DZ two-shotting people, and that is my concept on this build. And in the mod slot, as you can see, I have another first aid self-heal. Moving on to the character sheet, as you can see, I have 120% crit hit damage and 176% headshot damage. In armor damage, I have 13.5%, damage to elites 11%, so this build is viable in both PvE and PvE. Zero skill haste, but like I said, you can spec into skill haste to get your heals back faster since having low skill power, and since this is more of a DPS end, almost glass cannon build. That would help you get your skills back a lot faster, but also it would also make you a little bit more squishy, because you're losing 15k in health, and that's the equivalent to 1,000 base stat of stamina. So that's why I opted in for health on all my mods instead of skill haste. As you can see, a little over 30%, 30.5% armor. My max health is 205k. Actually, I thought I was a little bit lower than that, so that's not half bad right there. So yeah, overall, I suggest try this build out. It works really, really well. And now I'll show you what I was talking about, the scope. See, when hip firing in is one thing, but when you scope in, it's much, much easier to take care of enemies that are in mid-range than it is running a MK12 or MK15 time scope, because then you'd be zoomed right in on their face, and if you say they're like right here and you try to scope into them, then basically all you're going to see, and it's going to be hard to swivel left to right and actually get a shot on them. So definitely you want a C79 scope on any marksman rifle that you'll be using in your Deadeye build. I hope this has been informative to you. This is my take, and by no means is this build min-maxed at all. But I have tested it out, and it works really well on PvE. And on PvE, as long as you kind of sit back, which has kind of been a change of pace for me, because usually I'm the one that likes to run and gun, because as you can see in most of my builds, I'm a DPS player. I like running SMGs or ARs, and I like to be in the thick of things. So I've had to relearn myself as far as when it comes to PvP, when using these type of builds where you have to sit back and not really be right up close, up and personal with this type build. And also, while using this build in Last Stand, it completely, absolutely rapes, and it doesn't matter that you have the low base armor rolls on certain pieces. So when you go into Last Stand and it gets normalized, all your base armor is go up to max, so that way that does increase your toughness, and that increased it up to around, I believe, 298 to almost 300k in toughness. So this build is very much viable, and I recommend trying it out in Last Stand. So it is very deadly. So if you had liked it, please smash that thumbs up button, and if you are new to the channel, I appreciate you watching. Don't forget our giveaway. If you want to get it on that console giveaway, hit that sub button. All your support is very much appreciated. And once again, check out Revolution Gaming. It's an awesome gaming community of all games, not just the Division, filled with tons of people that are willing to help out in any way, shape, or form that they can. It's a fun, positive, uplifting community of all like-minded individuals that just love gaming in general. So this is your boy Relentless, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys fudging later.
I got broads in Atlanta, just to the lean the family, credit cards in the scammers, hitting the licks in the van.